The Millionaire's Contract Wife, a story of safety, choice, and redemption. The room did not erupt. It froze. Under the golden chandeliers of a New York ballroom, time seemed to pause as one sentence settled into the air. Cameras stopped clicking for a moment that felt too long. Conversations died mid-breath. At the center of the room stood Ethan Cole, 35 years old, a millionaire, heir to Cole Enterprises. And in front of hundreds of guests, his future collapsed without warning. No one yet understood what this moment would cost him, or who would step into the space it left behind. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The event had been planned for months. Not a wedding, but an engagement gala. A public promise. A calculated display of unity between power, money, and legacy. Investors filled the room. Board members smiled carefully. Reporters waited near the edges, sensing a headline. Ethan Cole stood beside Charlotte Delmont, the daughter of one of his company's largest partners. He wore a tailored black suit, his posture composed, his expression unreadable. To the world, he looked steady, reliable, controlled. Then Charlotte reached for the microphone. Her smile did not falter, but her voice did not soften either. "I cannot marry you, Ethan," she said clearly. "This engagement is over." The silence that followed was heavy and immediate. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Cameras surged forward, flashes exploding like lightning. Ethan felt heat rise behind his eyes, but he did not move. Years of discipline kept him standing while everything else unraveled. By sunrise, the damage was everywhere. Screens across Manhattan replayed the footage on a loop. Headlines framed him as reckless, unstable, and exposed. Cole Enterprises stock fell sharply. Phones rang without pause. Ethan locked himself inside his office on the 52nd floor. From behind the glass, the city looked distant, almost unreal. His assistant stood by the door, pale, whispering that the board was already waiting. When the doors closed behind him, the room smelled of fear and expensive cologne. One director slammed a folder on the table. "Your image is costing this company millions, Ethan. The public sees a reckless playboy again. We need stability, fast." Ethan's attorney, a calm man in a gray suit, offered a strange solution. "Public perception, Mr. Cole, is about narrative. A broken engagement paints you as unstable. But if we show a happy, grounded marriage, something wholesome, the market will forgive you." Ethan stared, unblinking. "You are suggesting I marry someone immediately?" "Precisely. A temporary arrangement. We could draft a private contract, 6 months in duration. You appear happily married. The board calms down, investors return, and after the term expires, both parties walk away." Ethan exhaled slowly. It sounded absurd, yet absurdity was safer than ruin. He leaned back, tapping the armrest. "Who would agree to that?" The lawyer hesitated. "We have one candidate. Her name is Maya Turner. She works part-time at the Cole Foundation. Clean record, good reputation, sympathetic background. She has a sick younger brother and financial difficulties. Her story could humanize you." Ethan turned to the window overlooking the city. Beyond the glass, the lights of Manhattan blurred into gold streaks. His reflection looked like a stranger, hollow eyes, tired posture, a man running out of control. "Set up a meeting," he said finally. "If she agrees, draft the contract." That night, alone in his penthouse, Ethan poured a glass of bourbon and stared at the city below. He replayed Charlotte's words in his head, every syllable cutting deeper. Somewhere between the silence and the city noise, he decided that emotions were liabilities. From now on, everything, including love, would be business. Meanwhile, across the river, Maya Turner sat beside her brother's hospital bed. The monitors blinked softly, medical bills piled on the table, like unspoken threats. When a call came from a private number, she almost did not answer. "Miss Turner," a composed voice said, "this is the legal department of Cole Enterprises. We would like to discuss a professional arrangement that could be mutually beneficial." Maya listened in disbelief as the proposal unfolded. A marriage contract, temporary but binding. It sounded unreal, even indecent. Yet the number they offered could cover her brother's surgery and months of treatment. After hanging up, she sat in silence, the hum of hospital machines echoing the chaos in her mind. Her heart whispered no, but desperation whispered louder. By dawn, both Ethan Cole and Maya Turner had agreed to meet. Two strangers, bound by circumstance, about to sign an agreement neither fully understood. A cold contract on paper, written to save reputations and lives, unaware that destiny had already begun rewriting its own fine print. The next afternoon, Ethan Cole arrived at the private suite of the Cole Enterprises legal department. Every surface gleamed with marble and polished glass. A soft jazz melody played faintly in the background, but it did little to hide the tension that filled the air. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the skyline while waiting for the woman who would soon become his wife on paper. When the door opened, Maya Turner stepped inside. She looked nervous yet composed, wearing a simple beige dress and holding a small purse close to her chest. Ethan turned, their eyes meeting for the first time. For a brief second, he noticed something unexpected: honesty. No pretense, no gold-digging charm, just quiet strength. "Miss Turner," Ethan said, his voice controlled, almost cold. "Mr. Cole," she replied softly. "I have read everything. I know what this is." He nodded toward the table where two identical documents lay open. The contract spelled out every detail: the 6-month duration, the public appearances, the confidentiality clause, and the payout to be transferred once the agreement was complete. "You will not be asked to do anything inappropriate," Ethan said, his tone clinical. "There will be no personal expectations, just a performance for the cameras. My reputation improves, your brother receives his surgery, and when it is over, we part ways. Cleanly." Ethan slid the contract a fraction closer, as if distance could make it feel less shameful. "There's one more rule," he said, eyes still on the paper. Maya looked up. "That's not in the document." "It doesn't need to be." His voice stayed flat, but something tightened in his jaw. "In the house, you can do whatever you want, except one thing." He paused, and for the first time, the silence felt heavier than the money. "Never touch the piano." He waited, as if expecting her to laugh. "And never ask about my mother." Maya blinked. Of all the clauses she had expected, privacy, appearances, cameras, this was the strangest. "What?" Ethan didn't answer. He simply picked up his pen. "If you can agree to that," he said, "then sign." Maya studied the contract for a long moment. "And if I refuse now?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "Then I find someone else. But I believe you need this money more than I need another stranger in my life right now." The words were sharp, almost cruel, but beneath them was exhaustion. He was not trying to hurt her. He simply no longer believed in gentleness. Maya looked down, signed her name, and whispered, "Let us both get what we need, then." The next morning, the headline screamed across every business page: "Millionaire, Ethan Cole marries mysterious woman in private ceremony." The wedding took place at a secluded garden owned by the Cole family. There were no friends, no family, only a photographer and 2 witnesses paid to smile. Maya wore a simple white dress loaned by the foundation. Ethan looked impeccable in a black tuxedo that fit his shoulders like armor. As the officiant spoke, Maya caught the faint flicker of emotion in Ethan's expression, not joy, but pain disguised as composure. When the words, "You may kiss the bride," were said, Ethan hesitated before brushing a formal kiss on her cheek. Flashbulbs went off, sharp and sudden, like lightning. For the world, it looked perfect. For them, it was hollow. After the ceremony, they rode in silence back to the Cole mansion, a place larger than anything Maya had ever seen. The marble floors echoed beneath her steps as servants bowed and whispered behind their hands. Ethan showed her to a guest room. "You may stay here." We will appear together when required. Beyond that, live as you wish. That night, Maya sat by the window, looking out at the glittering city. She wondered what kind of man would choose to live in such emptiness. Ethan, meanwhile, stood in his study, staring at the marriage certificate lying on his desk. His signature looked foreign. He told himself it was just a transaction, a temporary alliance, nothing more. Yet as he replayed the memory of her steady voice, saying, "Let us both get what we need," something shifted quietly inside him. It was not love, not yet, but it was the first time in years that Ethan Cole felt anything at all. And somewhere in the quiet mansion, the woman who had married him for money began to suspect that behind his coldness was a man whose soul had been waiting too long to be seen. The first week of marriage passed like a quiet storm. The Cole mansion, a vast estate overlooking the Hudson River, was beautiful but cold. Every morning, Ethan left before sunrise, his car rolling down the long driveway toward Manhattan. Every evening, he returned after dark, speaking little, his face unreadable. Maya spent her days wandering through rooms too large for comfort. At the far end of the foyer, Maya noticed the piano. It stood beneath the tall windows, untouched, its surface polished but lifeless, as if it belonged to a memory rather than a home. She slowed her steps without realizing it. For a moment, her fingers hovered near the edge of the instrument. Not to play, just to feel its presence. Then she remembered his voice. "Never touch the piano." Maya stopped. She withdrew her hand, stepping back as if the air around it had quietly warned her away. When she asked the housekeeper why no one played, the woman said gently it was Mrs. Cole's favorite. That night, Maya heard soft music echoing faintly through the halls. A single note drifted through the hallway. Maya froze. The sound was coming from the piano. She stood at the doorway, watching Ethan sit alone beneath the dim light, his fingers pressing the keys slowly, carefully, as if one wrong touch might break something fragile inside him. Something tightened in her chest. Whatever the rule was protecting, it was not the piano. She turned away before he could notice her, and the music stopped. She stepped back into the shadow before he could turn around. He looked up when he saw her. "I did not mean to interrupt," she said quietly. He gave a half-smile. "You are not interrupting. I forgot anyone else lived here." The words stung, though his tone carried no malice. Maya lingered in the doorway, watching the man who looked powerful by day appear fragile under the soft light of night. There was something broken in him, something pride had tried to bury. Days turned into weeks. Their public life was a perfect illusion. They attended charity events hand in hand, smiled for photographers, and exchanged rehearsed glances that made headlines the next morning. Behind closed doors, silence grew thicker, but small moments began to change. Everything. One afternoon, as they prepared for a public appearance, Maya noticed Ethan struggling with a cufflink that refused to close. She reached out, fastening it gently. Their eyes met for a brief second, long enough for him to notice the kindness in hers. Later that evening, during the gala, Maya spoke passionately about the Cole Foundation's charity for children affected by financial fraud. Her sincerity drew applause from the audience. Ethan, standing beside her, felt something shift again. For the first time, her presence elevated his image not as a calculated facade, but as something real. After the event, as they rode back in the car, the city lights flickered through the tinted glass. "You were impressive tonight," Ethan said, his tone softer than usual. "It was not an act," Maya replied. "Those children matter. Money can fix numbers, but it cannot fix people." He looked at her then, truly looked. "You sound like my mother." The mention of his mother caught Maya by surprise. "I read that she founded the Cole Foundation," she said carefully. Ethan nodded. "She believed in doing good, even when my father cared only about profits. When she died, the foundation nearly collapsed. I kept it running for her name, not for her purpose." Maya hesitated. "My father once worked for a charity partner connected to the Cole Foundation, years ago." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Which one?" "The Turner Trust," she answered. "It was dissolved after some incident. I do not remember much. I was a child." Ethan said nothing more, but his expression changed. That night, long after she had gone to her room, he searched the name online. Old articles appeared, financial scandals, missing funds, and whispers of corruption involving his late father's associates. He closed the laptop, uneasy. The past, it seemed, was circling back. Meanwhile, Maya stood on the balcony outside her room, the wind lifting her hair. For reasons she could not explain, she felt this same heaviness, as if their two lives were tied together by a secret that neither of them yet understood. Two strangers, bound by a contract, now shared more than a home. They shared ghosts that refused to stay buried. 2 months into their contract marriage, the illusion began to crack. What had started as a silent arrangement now lived under the flashing lights of tabloids. Ethan Cole's once carefully managed image was suddenly under fire again, and this time the attack was personal. It started with a single article on a finance blog. Who is Maya Turner? The secret behind the Millionaire's Bride. At first, Ethan ignored it. Gossip came and went. But by morning, every news outlet in the city had picked it up. The article revealed pieces of Maya's past that she had never spoken about. Her father's connection to a failed charity, accusations of missing funds, and whispers that she had changed her name to escape scandal. Ethan's phone buzzed without rest. The board called an emergency meeting. His attorney arrived before sunrise, holding a printed copy of the article. Someone leaked confidential information from inside the foundation, he said, and they have documents that look real. Documents? Ethan asked sharply. Real or forged? We do not know yet, but the damage is spreading fast. When Maya entered the dining hall that morning, Ethan was waiting. His expression was cold, unreadable. He placed the printed article on the table in front of her. Would you like to tell me, he said quietly, why the woman I married for stability is now being accused of charity fraud? Maya's hands trembled. Those are lies. My father was framed. He tried to expose corruption in a company tied to your father's business. After that, everything fell apart. Ethan's jaw tightened. My father is not here to defend himself. And neither is mine, she replied, her voice breaking. He died trying to clear his name. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, Ethan looked at her not as a partner in a deal, but as a stranger carrying a burden that somehow linked back to his own family. Across town, in a glass-walled office, Victor Graves, the chief financial officer of Cole Enterprises, watched the chaos unfold on his monitor. His plan was working perfectly. Victor had once admired Ethan's mother and despised Ethan's father, the man who had ruined his own family through deceitful business deals. For years, he had waited for a chance to destroy the Cole legacy. Now, through Maya, he had found the perfect weapon. He made one call to a journalist and another to a private investigator. Keep the story alive, he said. Make it sound convincing. And find something else, anything that ties her back to the Cole family. Scandals. By evening, stock prices began to fall again. Cameras gathered outside the Cole mansion gates. Headlines screamed betrayal. Millionaire's bride with a hidden past. Ethan avoided Maya the entire night. He locked himself in his office, pacing under the dim light. He wanted to believe her, but doubt was louder than reason. The past had already taught him that trust was dangerous. Meanwhile, Maya sat alone in her room, tears sliding silently down her face. Every word in those articles tore through her like glass. She had agreed to this marriage to save her brother, not to be destroyed by it. When the phone rang, she answered with shaking hands. A distorted voice whispered, "Walk away from Ethan Cole, or we will release proof that you embezzled funds yourself." Her heart dropped. "Who are you?" The line went dead. Maya packed a small bag that night. Before she left, she placed her wedding ring on Ethan's desk beside the contract they had both signed. Her note was short, written with steady handwriting even as her tears fell. You asked for a performance. I gave you one, but I cannot play the villain in your story. When Ethan entered his office the next morning, the ring caught the sunlight, glinting like a mirror of his own guilt. For the first time, he realized the truth. Somewhere between the lies, the pretense, and the headlines, he had come to care for her. And now, she was gone. Outside, the storm gathered. The man who had built his empire on control was about to lose everything to the one thing he had sworn never to trust again: love. For 3 days, Maya Turner disappeared. The tabloids feasted on her absence, calling it an escape, a confession of guilt, a vanishing act of the millionaire's fake bride. Reporters camped outside Cole Enterprises, demanding a statement. Ethan Cole said nothing. He had buried himself in meetings, in damage control, in silence. But none of it helped. The markets did not trust silence, and neither did his own heart. Late one night, Ethan sat alone in his office, his tie loosened, eyes fixed on the city skyline. Victor Graves entered without knocking. "You need to make a choice," Victor said. "If you step down as CEO, I can negotiate with the press. I can spin this story to protect the company. Or you can cling to your pride and watch Cole Enterprises crumble." Ethan's voice was low but steady. "You sound very confident, Victor. Almost as if you were the one holding the matches." Victor smiled faintly. "Confidence comes from preparation. You should try it sometime." When he left, Ethan's instinct screamed that something was wrong. Victor had been too calm, too certain. Ethan called his attorney and ordered an internal audit of the foundation's financial records, the same files Victor claimed to have reviewed months earlier. Meanwhile, miles away, Maya had taken refuge at the old building that once housed the Turner Trust, her father's former charity. It had been abandoned for years, the windows boarded up, the air filled with dust and memories. She wanted to find proof, something that could clear her father's name and, maybe, her own. As she searched through old boxes, she found a stack of ledgers dated from over a decade ago. Her father's handwriting filled every page. The records showed large sums transferred to accounts linked to Cole Enterprises. Names she did not recognize were circled in red, and one of them was Victor Graves. Before she could take a photo, she heard footsteps outside. The doorknob turned. Someone was there. Maya froze, clutching the book to her chest. A faint crackling sound filled the air. Smoke! Within seconds, the hallway erupted in flames. The fire spread fast, feeding on old paper and wood. Maya covered her mouth with her sleeve, coughing, searching for a way out. Her phone slipped from her pocket, shattering on the floor. She reached the window, broke the glass with her elbow, and screamed for help. Back in Manhattan, Ethan's phone rang. It was the hospital. "Mr. Cole, a woman named Maya Turner has been admitted. She suffered smoke inhalation and minor burns." For the first time in years, Ethan felt fear, not for his company, but for a person. He left immediately, ignoring his security team's protests, driving through the night until he reached the hospital. When he entered the room, Maya lay pale against the white sheets, an oxygen tube beneath her nose. Her eyes fluttered open as he approached. "You came," she whispered. "I should have come sooner," Ethan said quietly. He sat beside her bed, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. "I read the articles. I saw what they said about you." Her voice was faint but steady. "It was Victor. I found proof at the old Turner Trust office. He was connected to the fraud, not my father. But the fire, it was no accident." Ethan's eyes darkened. "You're saying Victor tried to kill you?" She nodded weakly. "He wants to bury the past. He used me to destroy you, just like your father destroyed mine." Ethan felt something inside him break, a mixture of anger, guilt, and fierce protectiveness. He stood, fists clenched. "You will not face this alone anymore. I promise you that." For the first time, Maya saw the mask of control fall from his face. Beneath the businessman's composure was a man torn by regret, a man who finally understood that redemption could not be bought, only earned. Outside the hospital window, the night was still burning somewhere across the city. But inside that quiet room, something else had ignited, not a fire of destruction, but one of resolve. Ethan Cole would no longer hide behind contracts and boardrooms. The truth had cost too many lives already. Now, it was his turn to fight back, not as a millionaire protecting an empire, but as a man determined to protect the woman who had unknowingly become his only truth. The following morning, sunlight filtered softly through the hospital blinds. Ethan Cole had not left Maya's bedside. He sat in the chair beside her, still wearing the same suit from the night before. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. Maya stirred slightly, her breathing calmer now, the color returning to her face. When her eyes opened, she found Ethan watching her quietly. There was no trace of the cold businessman she once knew. His voice, when he spoke, was low and genuine. The doctors said you will recover fully. You were lucky. Another few minutes in that fire and... He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Maya smiled weakly. I suppose luck has not completely abandoned me yet. He leaned forward. Tell me again everything you found. Start from the beginning. She took a deep breath. My father worked for the Turner Trust, a small foundation that partnered with the Cole Foundation many years ago. He discovered that funds meant for charity were being redirected to offshore accounts. When he tried to expose it, someone framed him. The scandal ruined our family. My mother fell ill, and we lost everything. Ethan listened in silence, his hands tightening around the edge of his chair. Do you know who was behind it? Yes, Maya said softly. Your father, Richard Cole. His name appeared in several of the ledgers. But there was another name, too, Victor Graves. I did not understand the connection back then, but now it makes sense. Victor's family was destroyed by your father's business. He blamed all Coles for it. He wanted revenge, and he used me to get to you. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of her words sinking deep. The sins of his father had returned, poisoning everything he tried to build. He rubbed his temples. My mother never knew. She ran the foundation because she believed it could help people. But when she died, I stopped caring. I let Victor handle everything, thinking he was loyal. Maya looked at him carefully. He never was. He used your guilt and your reputation against you. He thought destroying you would avenge his family. Ethan stood, pacing toward the window. Outside, the city moved as if nothing had changed. Cars, lights, people. But for him, everything had shifted. I spent my life trying to prove I was not like my father, he said quietly. And yet here I am, cleaning up his mistakes with the same arrogance. Maya reached out, touching his sleeve gently. You cannot change what your father did, but you can decide what kind of man you will be now. He turned to face her, eyes searching hers. And what kind of man do you think that is? The one who came back for me, she said simply. Her words lingered between them like a fragile thread of hope. For the first time, Ethan felt something inside him ease, not forgiveness but understanding. That afternoon, Ethan visited his late mother's old office in the Cole Foundation headquarters. He searched through archived files and digital records, confirming everything Maya had said. Victor's name appeared again and again in old transfers, hidden beneath shell companies and coded memos. The evidence was undeniable. When Ethan returned to the hospital, he carried a folder filled with documents. He placed it on Maya's bed. You were right. Victor has been manipulating the foundation for years. He used our family's history to destroy us both. But it ends now. Maya opened the folder, her eyes widening as she saw her father's signature beside Richard Cole's. This was the project that ruined him, she whispered. He was telling the truth all along. Ethan sat beside her again. Maya, I cannot undo the past, but I can make it right. I will clear your father's name, and I will make sure Victor answers for what he has done. Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. And what about your father? Ethan hesitated. He is already gone, but maybe the best way to redeem his name is not by hiding his mistakes, but by rebuilding what he destroyed. Outside, clouds drifted across the sun, casting moving shadows on the hospital walls. Ethan took her hand gently, their fingers intertwining for the first time, not as part of a contract, but as a promise. In that quiet moment, the past no longer felt like a chain around his neck. It felt like a path, painful, yes, but leading towards something real. For the first time since the scandal began, Ethan Cole no longer felt like the heir to a broken empire. He felt like a man finally ready to fight for truth, and for the woman who had taught him what redemption truly meant. A week passed after the press conference that changed everything. The world now knew Ethan Cole's truth, and so did he. The chaos that had surrounded his name for months finally began to quiet. Reporters moved on to other scandals, and investors who once called him reckless now called him courageous. But for Ethan, the silence that followed was not peace, it was reflection. Every morning, he visited the hospital where Maya continued her recovery. He brought her fresh flowers from the small garden behind the Cole mansion, a place he had not stepped into in years. It was his mother's garden, a place she once called where broken things learn to grow again. Maya always smiled when he entered. Her color had returned, and the burns on her arms had begun to fade. One morning, as he set the flowers by her window, she said softly, "You do not have to come every day." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but I want to." Their conversations had become the quiet heartbeat of his days. They talked not about the company or the scandal, but about simpler things, books, travel, music. Ethan learned that Maya loved the ocean, but had never seen it up close. She learned that Ethan, despite all his wealth, had never once gone anywhere without a business reason. One afternoon, as they watched the sun drift lower over the city skyline, Maya turned to him. "What will you do now that you have stepped down?" "I am rebuilding the foundation," Ethan said. "But not for image this time. I wanted to stand for what my mother believed in, for what your father tried to protect. I would like you to help me lead it." She looked at him, surprised. "Me?" "Yes," he said. "You have a heart for it. I have the resources. Together, maybe we can make something good out of all this." For a long moment, Maya said nothing. Then she smiled. "If we are rebuilding from ashes, I suppose it makes sense for both of us to start there." A week later, Ethan walked with her through the newly restored Cole Foundation offices. The walls were lined with photographs of children, families, and communities the foundation had once supported. Maya stopped before a portrait of Ethan's mother. "She has kind eyes," she said. "She did," Ethan replied. "She believed love could fix anything. I used to think she was naive. Now I think she was right." As they turned a corner, a soft breeze from the open balcony brushed through. Ethan reached for Maya's hand, hesitated, and then held it gently. There was no contract now, no audience, no reason except one that needed no words. "Maya," he said quietly, "you have every reason to hate my family, and every reason to hate me. Yet you stayed long enough to help me see the truth. I do not know how to repay that." She looked up at him, her eyes warm. "You already have. You believed me when no one else would. That is more than enough." They stood there for a moment, the city alive below them, the sound of traffic fading into something distant and unimportant. Ethan felt the tightness in his chest loosen, a weight he had carried since childhood finally beginning to lift. Forgiveness did not erase the past, but it allowed them both to breathe again. That evening, Ethan drove Maya back to her apartment. Not the hospital, not the mansion, but a small place by the river she had chosen for herself. Before she stepped out, she turned to him. "Ethan, you once said love was a liability. Do you still believe that?" He met her gaze. "No," he said softly. "I think love is the only real asset we have." Maya smiled, closing the door gently. Ethan watched her disappear into the warm glow of the building's lights, realizing that redemption was not a headline or a victory. It was this, the quiet grace of being forgiven. A full year passed after the storm that had almost destroyed their lives. The city had moved on, but for Ethan Cole and Maya Turner, everything had changed forever. The man once known as a millionaire heir had become something else, a builder of hope. The woman once labeled a fraud now stood as the face of compassion. Together, they had turned tragedy into purpose. The newly named Redemption Foundation opened its doors that spring. Reporters gathered outside the restored Cole headquarters, cameras flashing, microphones ready. Inside the grand lobby, banners read, "Restoring integrity, rebuilding lives." Ethan and Maya stood side by side as they greeted families and volunteers, the light through the glass ceiling painting gold across their faces. It was Maya's first day as the foundation's executive director. She looked calm but emotional, her hands slightly trembling as she addressed the crowd. "A year ago," she said, "this foundation was a symbol of power. Today, it is a symbol of healing. We cannot change what was done in the past, but we can change what happens next." Her voice was steady, her eyes finding Ethan's across the room. He smiled, not the polished smile of the man he used to be, but a genuine one. When it was his turn to speak, he stepped to the microphone, adjusting his tie briefly. "This is not about redemption for me alone," Ethan said. "It is about every person who has been hurt by greed, every family who lost faith in good intentions. The Redemption Foundation exists to remind us that wealth means nothing without humanity." The applause that followed was long and sincere. Cameras captured the moment as Maya placed her hand over his, a silent gesture that said more than any speech could. Later that evening, after the guests had gone, they walked through the garden behind the building, the same garden his mother once designed. The air smelled of lilac and rain. Maya stopped beneath a willow tree, looking up at the stars. "Your mother would be proud," she said quietly. Ethan looked at her, his expression soft. "I hope so. I think she believed in this long before I did." They walked toward a small bench overlooking the fountain, the city lights shimmering beyond. For a long time, neither of them spoke. It was enough to sit there, listening to the quiet rhythm of the water, the hum of the world moving forward. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "Do you ever regret signing that contract?" Ethan laughed softly, the sound filled with warmth. "Every single day," he said, "because it was the wrong contract. It was written in ink, not in truth." She tilted her head. "And if you could rewrite it?" He looked at her, the glow of the lights reflecting in his eyes. "I would not call it contract anymore. I would call it promise." For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade. No reporters, no scandals, no past mistakes. Just two people who had survived everything the world could throw at them, now finding peace not in perfection, but in honesty. Ethan reached for her hand, and this time she did not hesitate. Their fingers intertwined easily, naturally, as if they had always fit that way. The night breeze rustled the leaves above them, carrying away the last traces of pain. Maya rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think people can really start over?" she asked. "Yes," he said simply, "but only when they stop running from who they are." In that quiet moment, beneath the soft light of the city, Ethan and Maya understood what redemption truly meant. It was not about erasing the past. It was about learning to live beyond it. And as the stars reflected on the fountain beside them, it became clear that their story, once written in scandal, was now being rewritten in something far stronger, love that had earned its way through fire. A year later, New York City sparkled under the lights of spring. The gala for the Redemption Foundation had become one of the most anticipated charity events of the season. Inside the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, guests mingled among golden chandeliers and tables covered with white roses. Soft jazz played in the background as stories of recovery and hope filled the air. Ethan Cole stood near the stage, no longer wearing the armor of a millionaire CEO, but the ease of a man at peace with his past. His tailored suit was simple, his expression calm. The once guarded eyes now carried warmth. Across the room, Maya Turner spoke with a group of young scholarship recipients, children whose families had been victims of the same kind of fraud that had once destroyed her own. When their eyes met across the crowd, Ethan smiled. Maya excused herself from the group and walked toward him. The years between them melted into that quiet, familiar moment where everything felt like home. "You did it," she said softly. "Look around, Ethan. This is what your mother dreamed of." He shook his head gently. "No, this is what we built together." The evening's host called them to the stage. As they stood side by side under the golden lights, the audience applauded. Ethan took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice steady and genuine. A few years ago, this foundation was just a name attached to an empire. But now, it stands for something real, for every person who thought their story was over, for everyone who believed redemption was impossible. Maya and I both know that sometimes life breaks you to teach you how to rebuild. The room fell silent. Maya looked at him, her eyes bright with emotion. Then the host asked the question that everyone had been waiting for. "Is it true," she said with a smile, "that your marriage started as a contract?" A ripple of laughter spread through the audience. Ethan smiled, his gaze fixed on Maya. It did, he admitted, but we rewrote the fine print with love. The crowd erupted in applause. The sound was not the hollow roar of business success, but the warm echo of human connection. As photographers capture the moment, Ethan turned to Maya and whispered, "You once told me that love is not about perfect timing, but about courage. I finally understand that." She smiled, her hand finding his. "And you finally stopped running from it." The music swelled as they stepped down from the stage, moving together through the sea of people who now cheered not for wealth or fame, but for something much rarer, grace after chaos. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the ballroom had emptied, Ethan and Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of lilacs from the floral arrangements below. The skyline glittered like 1,000 quiet promises. Ethan slipped his hand into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the original marriage contract, now worn and faded. "I kept it," he said softly, "as a reminder of where we started." Maya took it from him, tore it gently in half, and let the pieces drift into the night air. "Then let this be where it ends," she said. He drew her close, their foreheads touching as the lights of New York shimmered around them. "No, isang guisperth. This is where it begins." The camera of the world might have stopped watching, but their story continued. Not as a transaction, not as redemption, but as something far greater. Two hearts that had learned to rebuild not an empire, but each other. As the city slept beneath them, the night faded into dawn. And for Ethan Cole and Maya Turner, the new foundation of love was already built, not on fortune, but on truth.